أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Moderated Mediation IBM SPSS AMOS series. Moderated Mediation. Not only you are trying to determine if mediation is present, but you are also trying to see if the moderator is changing the strength of indirect effect. In case of moderated mediation, what we are looking at is that whether a particular moderator strengthens or weakens an indirect relationship. In the last example, we had this moderator over here between X and M. In this example, this moderator is between M and Y. Now, the easiest way to tackle this issue is to use estimates function in AMOS outlined in the mediation tutorial that we have done earlier. We are going to do it again in this particular session as well. Now, in our example, what we are doing is we are going to assess whether the indirect effect, that is the effect of organizational commitment on organizational performance through collaborative culture, is moderated by role ambiguity. Our moderator will be role ambiguity, which negatively influences the relationship from organizational commitment to organizational performance through collaborative culture. This is the graphical representation of the relationship. The proposed model, here is the model in AMOS. Now have a look here, role ambiguity now influencing OP, because this is the relationship here, the B path that is being moderated, and the interaction effect affecting the DV as well. Now the interaction effect is centered collaborative culture and centered RA. In AMOS, we drag our constructs. Now I have already made these constructs in SPSS by taking mean of the indicators for each of these constructs, and then I centered these variables. How to center the variable, I'm going to quickly do it, and a detailed video will be shared in the description as well. And finally, we create the interaction, and the interaction terms needs to be created by mean-centered variables. Now after that we have done this model, we will use estimates to identify whether there is moderated mediation or not. So how do we define estimates? And why do we need estimates? Because we need to calculate whether the moderator is moderating the indirect effect, that is, whether or not moderated mediation is present. But before we use estimates, let's do first step. Let's center our variables quickly. Now here is my data set, and I've already created the composite variables. So I've got OC here, CC here, OP here, RA here. Now all those four variables that I need, here they are. So I need to center my CC variable and my RA variable, because CC is the independent variable in the relationship that is being moderated and RA is the moderator. So how do we center it? The first thing that we need to do is we need to go analyze descriptive statistics, descriptives, CC and RA, because these are the two variables that are going to be used in the interaction. Now if you want to know more about simple moderation, I'm going to share a video. Press OK, and here are your mean values that we are going to use. So I'm just going to copy it for now, and I've already got it here in my Word document. Now to center it, what I'll do is I'll subtract this value, this mean value here, from RA, because I'm going to center RA. So go to transform, compute variable, and CRA is the centered RA. RA is my composite variable, and this is the mean value that is to be subtracted. RA. Now press OK. Now similarly, I'm going to center collaborative culture, which is my mediator. Transform, compute variable, and I'm going to name it CCC because collaborative culture is now centered, and here is the mean value subtracted from CC, the composite of collaborative culture. Here it is, and press OK. Now the two variables are centered. Where are they? Look at this here. Now I need to create the interaction. Transform, compute variable, let's say CCC into RA, that is CRA. Is this what I have done in my model? Yes, here it is. So let's do it. Now the centered collaborative culture multiplied with centered RA to create the interaction term. Press OK. And here are your terms defined. Press save. Now here is my model. Now in order to add these to the model, you've got to get your variable list here. And simply what you need to do is you need to drag your variables here like this. That's it. Now this is OC, CC, OP. This is the mediation relationship. RA is influencing this B path here, so it will influence OP. So the moderator that is moderating the path, it will influence the endogenous variable in that relationship. And similarly, your interaction term will affect the endogenous variable as well, because this is the path that is being moderated and the exogenous variable are covariant with each other. This is the exogenous 1, 2, 3. And your endogenous variables with the error terms. Your paths are to be defined. You need to name your paths. Now this is your A path, this is your B path, this is your C path, this is your D path from your moderator to your dependent variable, and this is your E path, that is the path of interaction. Because I'm going to use these paths to create the estimates to calculate the moderated mediation. Or in simple terms, the index of moderated mediation will be calculated based on these paths. Furthermore, I'm also going to calculate whether this mediation changes at higher level of the moderator, and I'm also going to assess whether this changes at lower level of the moderator. And for that, I need to define these paths. So each path is properly defined. Now moving on. In the estimates function, we are going to examine the indirect effects at different level of the moderator, as I simply explained now. In AMOS, we are going to select define new estimates function, which will bring up a pop-up window. How to do this? Let's have a look. Right click, define new estimates. This will help you define new estimates. Here you will define your estimate. The indirect effect is the product of A and B path. So your indirect effect, that is the effect of OC on OP through CC, is the product of A into B. And this will tell you whether there is mediation or not. Make sure the moderator and the interaction term are included in the model. Next, we need to probe the indirect effect, that is whether the moderator influences the indirect effect at different levels. That is whether the indirect effect changes at higher level of the moderator or at lower level of the moderator. And all of this will require a certain formula that is defined using these estimates. Now in the estimates function, let's label these one stand below and one stand above. This will denote that the moderator is one standard deviation below the mean or above the mean. The standard deviation for role ambiguity is 1.36595. Now this will help us, this particular formula that we are going to just define will help us understand whether the mediating effect, that is the indirect effect of IV on DV through your mediator, changes at higher and lower level of moderator. And that is what moderated mediation is all about. Probing the moderator. To probe the moderator at different levels, we initially take the path from the interaction term that we defined earlier to the dependent variable, and this is defined as E path, and multiply it by the standard deviation of the moderator. Now why am I taking the path from the interaction term to the dependent variable? Because this is the relationship that is being moderated. Now since this is the relationship that is being moderated, your moderator is affecting the endogenous variable in this relationship, and your interaction effect is affecting the endogenous variable as well. We then take this value, that is the multiplied value, and add it to the mediator of the dependent variable. Where is it? Have a look here. So the first thing, your E path multiplied by your standard deviation of role ambiguity, that is low. If you are assessing the indirect effect at lower role ambiguity. So you multiply it with the standard deviation as mentioned in step 1. The next step, you add it with the B path. What is your B path? The path from the mediator to your dependent variable. That is the mediator to the dependent variable. Now to further clarify, have a look here. This is one stand below AB. That is your indirect effect at lower level of moderator. And this is your indirect effect at higher level of moderator with a plus sign. And this is how you calculate whether or not the moderator is moderating the indirect effect. And this is your index of moderated mediation. And I'm going to talk about this later. And this is simply the multiplication of E path with A path. And where are these paths? Here. Your E path, that is the interaction effect, and your A path, that is the effect from OC to the mediator, that is the independent to the mediator. Moving on. Now with moderated mediation, the formula is little different than just simply probing the interaction of the moderator that we did earlier. It's different than simple moderation. Now with the formula, we need these interactions as well. That is at lower level of moderator and at higher level of moderator. Now we are not taking the standard deviation from the moderator, but from the interaction. This is the difference from simple moderation or simply probing the moderating effect between an IV and DV. The E path in this formula represents the interaction term. In this instance, to probe the interaction, you will multiply the positive of standard deviation. Here it is. Now, if somebody has just watched my video on simple moderation using AMOS, he might get confused. So this is very important to explain that in this instance, to probe the interaction, what we are doing is we are probing the interaction. We simply multiply the positive of the standard deviation at higher and negative of the standard deviation, that is minus, at lower level. Moving on. Normally in a moderation test, you would need to form new high and low mean centered variables and interactions in SPSS if you are doing simple moderation analysis. But the estimates function will allow us to save some time by doing it all at once, as we have done in the formula previously. Once you have saved the new estimate function, make sure to run the syntax check. How to do this? Let's come here, right click, edit indirect effect. Now I've already defined it. So you can simply check the syntax and the syntax is fine. Okay, make sure that the estimates function will not run unless a bootstrap analysis is being performed. So your analysis properties need to change. If you go to here, let me close this. Let me go here. Bootstrap, perform bootstrap 5000, bias corrected confidence interval 95. This needs to be performed. Moving on. Again, that is done. Now here are our results. Now once you run it, these are the results that we are getting. How do we get these results? Let me close this and let me run it again. Let me close this one as well. Calculate estimates. And here is your output. The first thing that you see is your estimates, and I've got it in the PowerPoint slides. I've got everything in the PowerPoint slides. Estimates, scalars, user-defined estimates, and these are your effects, and these are the significance values, lower bound, upper bound confidence interval with the p-values. Now all of them are significant except for this one, which you can say it is significant because it's very slightly over 0.05. Let's come back and have a look here. Now we see all these are significant. Your interaction is significant. This means there is moderation. But is this moderation moderated mediation? That is, the moderator changes the indirect effect, that is the strength of indirect effect. We are yet to find out. Interpretation. We do have this information from scalars user-defined estimates that we created. Now we have the indirect effect. Is there mediation? Yes, there is mediation. One stand above AB, that is at lower level of the moderator. Is there mediation? Is there indirect effect at lower level of the moderator? Yes. Is there indirect effect at higher level of moderator to a certain extent? Yes. Now this is good initial information, but we still do not know about the indirect effect or how the moderator influences the indirect effect. For that, we need this information. Now, this, what I'm referring to good initial information, is this one here. And to get this information, whether the moderator is changing the indirect effect, we have to go to estimates, scalars, user-defined estimates, and within that, you can only have the effects or you can have complete details under bias-corrected percentile method and select two-tailed significance. Here it is. This will initially give us the indirect effect, that is the indirect effect. And if you select bias-corrected here percentile method, and within that if you select two-tailed bias-corrected confidence, you will have other information as well. Now look at this. Your indirect effect is significant. You will also see the indirect effects when we probed the interaction at one standard above and one standard below, that is above the mean and below the mean. The results show that when the moderator is low, that is low role ambiguity, this is the indirect effect, that is it strengthens. There is your indirect effect is improved. Look at the indirect effect at average level, at mean level of role ambiguity. Now look at the indirect effect, that is mediation at low role ambiguity, and look at the mediation at high role ambiguity. Now there is a considerable change, but both are to a certain extent significant at higher level, that is higher role ambiguity. Obviously this is highly significant. Moving on. The last test we need is if the construct of role ambiguity is significantly moderating the indirect effect. Now we know the change in the indirect effect at high and low level of the moderator, but what we need is whether the indirect effect is being moderated. We need to assess if the indirect effect is being moderated. Now to do so, we need index of moderated mediation. Now how do we get this index of moderated mediation? We simply need to multiply the E path, that is your interaction effect, with the A path. Where is it? Here it is. This interaction path here with this path here. Now minus 0.08 multiplied by 0.61. Go back here, look at the path. E path multiplied by A path will give you index of moderated mediation. Previously, when this path was being moderated, this red line, we multiplied E path, that is now that E path was pointing towards CC in that case. So E path multiplied by B path was your index of moderated mediation. In this case, since this is the relationship that is being moderated, so moderated mediation will be E path multiplied by A path. Now, where is it? Again, estimates, scalars, user-defined estimates, bias-corrected percentile method, two-tailed significance. The analysis examines if the slope is significantly different than 0, which indicates that moderated mediation is taking place. Is it taking place here? Yes, it is taking place. So we can say the indirect effect from OC to OP through CC is being moderated by role ambiguity. That is, the strength of this indirect relationship changes with your moderator included in the model. Now, how do you report it? Again, the direct relationships, these are present here. If you go output here, estimates, now these are your direct relationships here, all of these. Your indirect relationship, again, that is present here. Where is it? Have a look. A multiplied by B, and it was done in user-defined estimates. Estimates A into B, that is A path multiplied by B path to calculate your indirect effect and its significance and lower level and upper level confidence interval. And finally, your lower level, higher level, and index of moderated mediation. All these details are present here. These are the details. So this is how you can report your moderated mediation. Now, if we were to do the same model using Hayes process macro with OP as DV, OC as your independent variable, CC as your mediator, and the moderating variable RA with model 14, I've already set the options. Continuous variables that define products are centered, low and high role ambiguity, press OK. Let's quickly look at the results, whether they match or not. So I'm just going to look quickly at the index of moderated mediation here, 0.051, 0.035. And let's look at the end. 0.0, and this is rounded off, so 0.051. And we do not have the p-value here, but the index is the same. And if you look here, you can have a look at other variables. Let's say the interaction, 0.082. So where is 0.082? Go to estimates, 0.082. That is the interaction effect on OP. So the results are the same. I hope this session would have helped you understand how to run moderated mediation based on Hayes Model 14 using AMOS. Thank you very much.